Well, we're back in the shop here again, and you saw us fit the quarter knees in the skiff. That was a lot of fun. Next thing for us is to put a breast hook in it, but we have to go get it, so it's a little down the road. We're going to finish that skiff up pretty quick and get on to other things, especially the 23-footer. And we've brought a bunch of oak in here now for the 23-footer that you saw us go and get, and then we ripped it out at my house, actually. And I've got it on the floor here, 2 by 2, the matching pieces, but I can't do anything with it down there on the floor. I just can't. I can't lean over, even look at it. I don't even want to inspect it or anything. It's got to be up on some sawhorses. And I've got some sawhorses around the shop, but I'm using some of them. And I've got some mismatched horses right here. The other ones of it, I have no idea where they are. They could be in here, but I don't know. They're both different. This one I made quite a few years ago, and it's pretty nice, except for the top of it was twisted a little bit, or has become twisted, so the horse doesn't sit perfectly flat. It can be shimmed up and tuned up so it will, but that's just one of the things that could happen to any sawhorse. When you build one, you want to make sure this top piece is nice and flat, and that's whether or not it's horizontal like that, or if it's vertical like some other horses. If you put it vertical, it's the same problem. You've got a twisted horse, and then it doesn't fit flat on a flat surface. So, it's just something to consider. But, this one here has got the canted legs on it, canted in both directions like that. They're 30 degrees apart this way, so 15 degrees on each side. And this one is like 20 degrees. Oh, no, it's 10 degrees this way. So it'd be 10 degrees from here. The one I'm going to build is only 5 degrees because I don't think it needs to have this slant on it. It's really more for appearance than anything. Or if you were building horses that stack, which mine won't actually, you would do this because then one horse fits right down over the other and they can be the same length. If you have the legs straight up, one doesn't fit over the other unless you make one longer than the other or do something to compensate for it. So, these things are kind of pretty. Now, if I'm putting down a heavy load of lumber, on a lightweight horse, it has to be constructed properly because there's a lot of side force. When you take a forklift or something and put a load of lumber on there, that doesn't mean he's going to go straight down perfectly. Who knows what might happen? All kinds of movement. And if it's not on a perfectly flat surface, then it's going to be on 3 legs, so it kind of wants to twist the horse. You have to kind of make it strong enough and light enough to be able to move it. But, these ones right here are very nice. Mine's going to be pretty much a version of this, but the legs will stand up a little straighter here, and pretty much. And then I've got another horse here that I've also built. These are kind of nice around the shop because you can clamp on the end of it. The plywood's on the inside. And it doesn't hang over, so when you're using a handsaw, you can make your cut on a piece of wood right near the end of the horse, and your handsaw doesn't foul up with the legs like it would with this one, unless you hang the thing over. So, they're all a little bit different. Some are great for this and great for that. This one right here, like I said before, if you put a staging plank on the end of it, and you push on the wall real hard or doing something, you can flip the horse right over like that. So it pays to, if you're going to use them for staging, to cant the legs a little bit like that. That's all I'm saying. Around the shop, these kind of work perfectly. So, the only thing with them is I'd brace it this way, like I said, because that way the end force won't get it racking. These are built so that they won't rack, or we try to do it. We put enough screws so it kind of resists racking, and enough screws down here so that resists racking. And of course, this is something else. This really does 2 things. It supports the top piece, and it also stops the legs from opening up like this with force, because that's what would happen. They'd slide on a slippery surface and keep going out like this. So that resists that. And then these are nice and convenient because you can put a shelf in it. Like I said, you can put your tools and all kinds of things on there. But, the other thing I'd like to say while I'm here, I see people pocket the legs into the top piece. and it's just a waste of time because the pocket will never stay tight. Things shrink and they do all kinds of stuff, and you don't have much of a surface anyhow. So it doesn't really resist doing this. So in order to get that incline to put the legs on there, I just rip it with a table saw, you know, down to 15 degrees. And that's the way it works. And then of course I manufacture all the legs and start putting them together. And that's what goes on right there. Now I wanted to show you another type of horse here. This is what I call a lean horse, or a three-legged horse. And these are great for staging on a house or staging along a wall to put a shelf on or anything like that. They have exactly the same problem as a straight up and down horse. If you put your plank here and push on the wall, you could tip it over backwards that way. But if you put the legs on a little angle like that, the same as the other horse, that problem goes away. I didn't do that because I'm just using these against the wall for staging. But we've built these horses 10 feet tall. The taller they are, the more stable they are, and the less chance they have of kicking out or anything like that. You do have to be careful with them when you lean one against the wall. If it's on a real slippery surface and you get your plank here, it could slide down the wall and slide out like that. Well, you don't want that to happen, but staging on a house, you can put them like on the lawn and they don't slide. So they're very safe and easy to use, quick to make. And on top of that, you can take two of them identical if you want, and you can combine them like that. You just lean one against the other and throw a few screws in it, and what you have is a horse that's exactly the same height as this one. So you can put a plank across there, and you've got a shelf, and put it right on there like that. Now that's how a lean horse works. You can apply all kinds of weight on it, and they don't wiggle because they're on a 3-point landing. 2 points on the ground, 1 point on the wall. They don't wiggle. So they're very safe. You can make them any height you want. You know, you can make them to be 2 feet tall, 10 feet tall. Really, the higher they are, the safer they are. Now here we have a little kit. It's pretty much everything you need to make a sawhorse like this, just one horse. This is going to be the top piece right here. It's a 2x6. We're going to cut it 15 degrees on this side and 15 degrees on this side, and that's going to be the top. The legs just go on to that surface once we cut it. Now, that's pretty much it. One thing about a piece like this, you want it to be perfectly flat. I'm even going to demonstrate that on the table saw in a little while, but this one is nice and flat. It's not twisted at all. So that's the best way to start out, is with a nice piece that's not twisted. Now these are going to be the legs. I've jointed one edge of it and ripped them in a table saw to this size. They're 5.5 inches at this point. They're just ledger board, spruce ledger board, right out of the lumber yard. That's exactly what you want. You got to be careful picking it out like any lumber, that it's not split or something like that. But we got 4 really nice pieces right here. They're cut to a rough length. They're longer than we need. I'm going to cut a compound angle on both ends of them on the chop saw. So that's going to be the pieces, the legs. The next thing we've got here is the braces that go from one leg to the other, and the shelf sits on top of these. That's just a rough piece of lumber too. It's some cedar that I had laying around. I've cut the top of it 15 degrees, so when I put it on the legs, the shelf will sit on it nice and flat like that. So I've got those 2 pieces. They have to be cut to length on an angle to match the legs. So we've got that. Then we're going to make 2 braces, like I had said, that kind of go in there on an angle like this, right, to hold the, well actually they go this way, to hold the sawhorse from racking front to back. So that's going to go in there. And then these are going to be the plates that go on the end right here. So we're going to cut 4 plates that go on the ends of the sawhorses, or inside the legs, one or the other really, and they'll be cut on a little 15-degree angle, or I'm sorry, a 5-degree angle on the top, in order to sit really nice against the top piece, and then angle cut like this in order to match the legs. So that's going to be that piece. And then what we have here is just a piece that we're going to use to make a shelf in the bottom of it afterwards. And these are the screws. I've got 2 different length screws here. We've got 2" by 7, and we've got 1.5" by 6, both for 2 different purposes. These are for putting 2 1-bys together And these are for connecting 1-bys to a 2-by. So that's what we've got right there. Now the first thing to do is set the table saw on a 15-degree angle, because I'm going to cut both sides of the top on that angle so that the legs just screw right on there. So it's pretty easy to do, but you have to be awful careful using any table saw. I'm being very careful to keep my fingers out of the blade, believe me. The next thing you'll see is when I push the 2-by off the end of the table saw, being that it's on an angle like that, you can't let it rise up until it clears the blade completely. And then I don't have an outfeed table. So what I do is I push it a little too far, and then it tips up, and then I can grab it and remove it from the table saw. Now this is the piece we ripped for the top, and like I said, I picked that piece out of all these scraps because it was nice and flat, not twisted. Look at that, you can push down on it, it doesn't rock at all, it's nice and flat. That's the way you want to start, because otherwise the horses start coming out crooked when you assemble it, so it just doesn't work for you. You need the nicest piece to start, as opposed to this piece. There's a piece of 2x6 right there, but look at this. Man, if you ever made a sawhorse with that as the top, it would just be a mess. So it behooves you to pick the pieces out really carefully. And now what we're going to do is I'm going to cut this to length for the top. I'm going to cut it at 32 inches. So I'm just going to cut a little scrap off it right here first. Now I'm going to take an end for end it, because I'm going to cut that end off the same way and measure 32 inches, which is right there. Actually, for the chop saw, I've forgotten, you have to put the line on this side. All right, there we go. Let's do this. 32 inches right there. Look at that. See, now I'm not that familiar with these tools, because this one's got a laser on it. So you can put the mark on either side. And that's nice, isn't it? Right up to the laser, just like that. And off you go. Now we're on to our legs. We're going to cut them to a compound angle on both ends. And we've swung the saw over 5 degrees, and then we've tilted it to 15 degrees. I'm marking the legs off at 24 inches because that's exactly the height that I want the sawhorse to be. And we can use the same cut on both ends of the leg. To make the next 2 legs, we've got to change the saw. We've got to swing it on the other side of 0, and we also have to tilt it on the other side of 0, because there's no way to cut it by just swinging the saw on the other side or just tilting the saw. You have to swing it and tilt it in order to cut the other 2 legs. Now I've got a piece of 2x4 here, and I'm going to cut 2 pieces of bracing for it. So I'm going to swing the saw over to 45 degrees and make 1 cut across the 2x4. That's going to be one end of both braces. Now I'm going to measure these braces 12 inches on the long side, right here, like that, and like that. And then I'm going to add 5 degrees to the chop saw because the legs are on a 5-degree angle. So we're going to do exactly that. There's 5 degrees right there. You see me touching down with the saw a couple of times because I'm not really relying on the laser right here. I'm sneaking up on the pencil line, so I chop down a couple of little times and move it up, and once I get it accurate, then I can make my cut. Now I'm going to put the second one up and cut that. There's our 2 braces. Now we're going to fasten the 4 legs onto the top, and you can see that I've got the top cut to that 15-degree angle on both sides. So Then I've got the legs right here. These are cut to a compound angle so that they'll slant 5 degrees this way and 15 degrees this way. So basically, I'm just going to hold the top up on an angle like that. And I've got it marked off right here, 2 inches from the end. So it doesn't have to be perfect when I'm putting that first screw in. I'm going to put 1 screw in the middle. Now these are square drive. They stay on the end of the bit really nice. I don't normally use anything like this in boat work, but this is a sawhorse. So we're going to use this. Oops. Just like that. Now I can set it with a bevel set. I've got a big bevel set here, and I've got that set at 5 degrees. So this is pretty accurate anyhow, but I'm going to put the bevel set inside here and just adjust it a little tiny bit because I want it to be perfectly accurate. And that's it right there. Now, if you trusted this or the top of this was on a little funny angle, it just wouldn't come out exactly right. So this is the way to go right there with a bevel set. Now the thing won't be moving around very much, and we should be able to get away with this. I'm going to stick one there. I'm going to stick one here. And I'm going to probably add 2 more to that later, but let me slide it over right here and put the other end on. Now, I'm going to mark it 2 inches from the end, like I always do. And then I'm just going to screw the leg on. First, I'm going to put 1 screw right in the middle, pick up my bevel set, and check it for angle. Once that's correct, I'll just sink a couple more screws. Then I'm just going to flip it over and do the same thing on the other side. The only thing on the other side, I'm going to start the screws first because it makes it a little bit easier. Now I got that fastened on there, but it's just a tiniest bit high, a few thousandths here, but I don't want to compromise, so I'm going to push this corner up where it belongs here, exactly, and fasten that. Now that's in the position where it belongs. This is a little high, this is a little high. So I'm just going to back this screw off a little bit, like so. And I'm going to put another screw in it right over here. But before I drive that in, I'm going to take my bevel set again and see if we've got the 5 degrees we're looking for. A little adjustment right there. That's pretty much it right there. And then you can see that this is where I want it, right here, even with that. So I've corrected it a little bit. I'm going to drive the screw. I could check it, but it really doesn't need to be checked. I'll check it right. Oh, perfect. There you go. Corrected. Now we're just going to stand it up and put the lower braces on. Pretty easy to do. We're going to take some of our mugs right here and put them right here. And then just put the brace on top of that. Oh, we don't want to go backwards. There we go. Like that, right there. So that's the height of the braces. So I can always tell my own sawhorses because I use a mug like that to hold this thing up. So I know exactly the dimension on that. So, that's what I do. I just keep it. So now all I'm going to do is put 1 screw right in the middle right here. Just to hold it still. Wait a minute. Okay, now let me make a mark right here. I'd trace it all the way to the bottom, but I really don't have to because I'm going to cut them 5 degrees in the chop saw. So, I don't really have to trace that whole line. Now, let me just take this down real quickly and take 2 of them simultaneously over to the chop saw and cut them to length. This cut is really easy because the laser does the work on this one. It's close to 90 degrees across the board, so the laser does work better. And I'll just cut one end, then I'll swing the saw on the other side of center 5 degrees and cut the other end. I can cut both pieces at once, 5 degrees on one end and the opposite 5 degrees on the other end. Now I'm only putting one screw in there because I want to leave the horse a little flexible. I'm even going to add a few more screws up here, but like I said, if it's a little flexible, I can make sure all four legs are sitting nice and flat. And this table I'm working with is flat. It's not twisted at all, so it's kind of my test thing here. Now let's turn it around, set it down again, take the next one, put that one in there, like that. The next thing for us to do is make our plywood braces for the ends of the horse. Now I'm going to measure it across the top right here, and it's 6 15/16. So I'll probably cut them about 6 7/8 so they don't hang out past the legs. And again, on the chop saw, all I have to do really is make a cut on the end of this piece of ply, cut it in half on the same bevel, so I've got one cut on both pieces. Flip them both over, and then I'm going to transfer my measurement on the top only, and then I'm going to cut the same angle with the chop saw on the other end of the brace. Here's the two plywood braces for the end. Now, they're identical because the chop saw makes everything identical, really nice, and it saves time because I don't have to draw any lines and then cut them, to the line. The chop saw takes care of all the angles. In this case, it's 15 degrees on each side. So there they are. Now, we're going to put them in the horse like this. But I'm going to stand the horse up when I do it because it's easier, and I'm going to clamp them against the top because I want to make sure they're real tight against the top before I fasten them on. I'm going to put the first screw at the top just to hold it in position. Then I'm going to use the plywood to correct the angle of the leg. So I just push the leg over even with the edge of the plywood, put a screw at the bottom. Then I can add a few more screws. Then what I'll do is I'll flip it around and do the same thing on the other side. And I'll end up with 5 screws on both sides, and that'll hold a lot of weight. This is the last step right here to pull the horse into position so that it'll sit flat on the table. Now we got both of those braces in. We're going to roll it up on its back. It's starting to look pretty nice here right now. Now we've got a few more braces and things to put in it, but this is the diagonal brace that we made to keep it nice and stiff. And they're just chopped out of a 2x4. Same thing on the chop saw. No line, just a measurement for length, and that's it. So there it is right there. We're putting this one here. This is 45 plus 5, the same angle that we've got on the legs, like that. And this side is 45 degrees exactly. And I've made a mark right in here in the center, so I want it. It's going to be just like that. And I'm just going to put these few little screws in it here just to hold it in place before I put the bigger ones in it. So yeah, that holds that in place. I'm going to do one at the very top, like that. Now I'm going to do the other one, and this goes in like this. Then I'll pump a few screws through the plywood into the ends of the 2x4 braces. Once I've got that done, I'm going to lay the horse on its side and then pump some screws from the top down into the 2x4 braces. Then we're going to take our shelf and put it into position. Now I'm going to even it up with just a pencil to the end of the legs right here, just to keep it flush, because it's been measured properly. If I get it flush on this end, it'll be flush on the other side. So, I just even that up like that, pump a screw in it there. I'll do the other end, and then we'll flip it around and do the other side. Now, this shelf is a really convenient thing because you can put tools on it, all kinds of things, but it also stops the sawhorse from twisting if you should put it on a very uneven surface and apply a tremendous amount of weight on it. It's possible that the sawhorse could twist, but not when you put a shelf in it like this. One last important step is to clip off the very outboard end of the legs with a plane, or any way you want to do it really, because that way you can pick the horse up on one end and drag it without splitting the corners of the legs off. Now that's a set of sawhorses right there. And I mean, that's a nice set. They're strong, they're pretty. They don't use anything but really scrap material, really, and they're easy to put together. There's no complications. They don't wiggle, which is really important to me because when I'm doing woodworking, I don't want the sawhorses wiggling all over the place. You just can't do your work properly. So they're nice and stable. I mean, these horses will probably take 5,000 pounds just like that, but when you put another piece on the top of them like this, when you load that up, it transfers all the weight right down into the ends of the legs, so it's not over pointing, loading the fastenings. And I mean, like that thing will probably take 10,000 pounds. So, like I said, these are the shop sawhorses that I use. You can make them with all kinds of different tools, a bandsaw, a skill saw, a table saw, you know, a chop saw like we just did. And the chop saw obviously makes it very easy, but it's well worth the effort to have some really nice sawhorses. I mean, I've been in shops where the sawhorse was just wiggling all over the place and it just makes your work impossible. So this is really like a tool in the shop. And then what we're going to do is set them down on the floor, and I've got a matching one in height. And I'm going to take my material that I'm going to use on the 23-footer, the chines and the rails, put them up on the sawhorses where I can do something to them. I can't do anything down there. I can't even go down there and inspect them or anything else. So what I'm going to do is set down 3 horses, put my material on there, and get going on the 23-footer.